Hey folks, welcome to the brewery. Today I'm tasting Twang Files number 3. We could loosely call this an extravaganza or long run if we wanted to, quite easily. This is the Black Rock Pilsner Blonde split between spring water and tap water. So we're testing whether the chlorine in the tap water is having an effect on the twang, whether it's creating twang, whether it's influencing the twang. I'll put a link up to the original brew day. But basically I've split the Black Rock Pilsner Blonde can into obviously 2 batches. One done with spring water, Tasmanian mountain spring water, purchased from brewers, and the other half is just straight tap water out of my tap, untouched in any way, just directly from the tap. Half a box of BE3 into each half, and 125 grams of Dex on top of that. So the equivalent of a normal batch, 1 box BE3, 250 grams of Dex. Regional gravity, both brews was 1041. Made them up to 11 litres. Fermented with 1 pack of Nova Lager, just pitched dry, into the fridge. The fridge had an ambient temp of 13 degrees. So it was getting us about a 14-15 degree ferment tap in the FVs. After 5 days, sorry, day 4, I ramped up to 18 degrees just to push it along. So as we went, now I'm going to change these beers because I've got the base and the spring listed. So that's the tap water beer, that's the spring water beer. Right here initially, just very quickly, I'm going to say that the tap water beer is just, yeah, is clearer, where that is pretty much, yeah, it's all but crystal clear. This tap water one is a little bit on the murky side. The head has fallen. You saw there initially that I poured very similar heads on both. That tap water has dropped twice as much as the spring water has. But both finished off at 10:10, so the water itself didn't affect the actual attenuation of the yeast in any way. They basically traced along within sort of 1 or 2 gravity points right through. I only did a couple of tests. Day 4, the tap water was 1 point lower. Day 6, it was 2 points under, so the spring water just took that little bit longer to come along. But by the time, I think they finished at 10:10. I didn't take a reading after that. Day 12, so after 6 days, or 8 days of being at 18 degrees, I cold crashed, and they were bottled 3 days later. So it was 11 days from pitching yeast to going in the keg. They're in the keg on the 12th of April. We are now on the 20th of June. So we've gone 2 months and 1 week, and I discussed this on a couple of videos and some lives only recently, that I was going to be, not that I was in Adelaide when this beer was due for its 9-week tasting. So I've had to push an extra week. So here we be. But the reality is that's not going to hurt us too much. So let's get some assessments going on. That's it. Black Rock Pilsner. I have done this kit previously, and I think my memory's helped me. I turned half of it into a NEPA. I think. Something like that. Now there is a fruity nose. Which is a little stronger on the tap version. Not much, but it is a little. But anyway. So yeah, it's got that little bit of rich sort of that sultana, raisiny sort of nose. It's got a nice thick, like a dense cap. It's fallen, the head, but it's still got a fairly dense cap there. It's got good carbonation. I mean, this has been in the keg for, oh sorry, on tap, actually in the keg, on the keg bloody serving pressure for pretty much the whole 9 weeks. So I've given it plenty of time to develop. I've got a couple of tasters along the way. I don't want to touch on that just at the moment, but anyway, let's give it a go. Okay. It's a little bit of that fruity sort of note coming through the body. It's reasonably clean. There's a little bit of twang there. Not a massive amount, but there is some sitting there. It's in the back palate, and I think I get that fruity note is tied. I think it's tied in with that sort of that twangy note. The two sort of work together. The initial tasting, was that more fruity note, and as that second and third mouthful, that sort of rolled into where that starts to turn into the twang. But not a shabby beer for what it is. That's the tap water. So this is the spring water. Now, as I've discussed before, there's a lot of people who outright are going to swear they'll fight with you, whatever, kick your dog if you don't agree with them, that tap water, chlorine, is the whole reason for twang. And as much as I can't agree with it completely, is there some truth to that? Let's find out. So as I said, that's the spring water version, all spring water. There isn't, and there's a little bit of that fruity note, but it's nowhere near the level as in the tap water. But it's still there. It's still there in the taste. It's not as evident so much up front, but it is definitely there from the mid palate back. It's probably a little softer. Yeah, hard to say. Okay, that's interesting. There's a bit less twang in this spring water one, but I'm finding it less palatable. Yeah, that's interesting. Like beyond the twang, that beer is fairly light bodied, cleanish, not quite crisp. Um, but there's some, there's some reasonable bitterness for the style. There's some malt. There's no real hop going on. But again, being I think by memory it was like a dryish European sort of style. That's not a totally, that's not a totally bad beer. It's drinkable. It's got the characters that you're generally expecting of that sort of a style. I certainly I certainly want to lean it more in the direction of being a rounded European lager. It doesn't have the crispness or the bite of a pilsner. And you can see the colour. It's just a little bit dark for, really. But yeah. Had this been done with all decks, and this is something I want to come to, and it's more an actual extravaganza thing specifically than the twang sort of side. But I'm starting to question more about how many of these actual extracts would actually be better beers with, almost or potentially 100% dextrose, sugar, as opposed to heavy malt. I said this is BE free. It's half a kilo of light dry malt. So there's as much dry malt as there is dex in the whole total beer. And actually, there's more light dry malt than dex. Yeah, and then you've got the maltodextrin as well. This tasting is a very clear bloody argument for getting dex heavy in some beers, and I had started working that way with the extravaganza before I stopped and started to come over to do these Twang Files brews. Yeah, but funny enough, that spring water one is definitely a tad fruitier. In previous beer where I've done the spring versus tap water, I've had the impression of the spring water beer being a little bit cleaner. In this case, I don't think that's necessarily the case. But it is very minimal. And it's hard to say exactly where the right taste or art are in these beers. The one pack of Nova Lager, I've not been a great fan of the Nova Lager in the past, but again, I don't think I've ever really let it condition out this amount of time. It hasn't had the time because it's been judged on the basis of being that quick turnaround beer. Like I said, as a kit beer, which in this case I think is not brewed with exactly the best variations or combinations of sugars, and that Nova Lager, it's made quite a good beer. plenty of brewers would be very happy with that. And just sort of drinking, getting into it without having too much consideration for the flavours and what's underneath. There is minimal twang. And again, Black Rock, I've said it before, I'll keep saying it, they are, in my experience, on another level as far as lack of twang goes in their kits. I tell people all the time, and I have for a long time, when they say, what kit should I brew? Go Black Rock. I have not found any other kit at this point that rivals them in that way. But again, you've got to give these beers time. This, I've had this, I said a couple of times along the way. This was not a fantastic beer at 3 weeks. It was not a great beer at 6 weeks. At now where we are at, what, 10 weeks thereabouts, this has developed into a good quality kit beer. It's not like it's not great. And that is definitely not as enjoyable. The spring water is not as enjoyable as that, which is just really that's playing with my head a little bit. But aside from the chlorine, it does build some sort of an argument for having to have some sort of, a few minerals in the water not really hurting, because apart from the chlorine, there's obviously stuff in your tap water. There's sodium, there's calcium, there's magnesium, there's lines, there's all these things. They're all there. From the water source, from the pipes, from bloody whatnot. So where your spring water is very light in the minerals, your tap water's definitely got a lot more in it. So I think there's an argument always for treating your tap water for your chlorine. But I don't think it's the be all and end all. It's not the solution. In this experiment, the tap water is a better beer. And the tap water clearly is not the cause of the twang. So if that's an argument you're throwing around on the internet, stop it. It's not. An individual brewer's water based on their location may have some sort of effect on the beer, but the reality is the twang's in the kit you start with. So if you're brewing a kit, you use the tap water, you're letting it age for 2 weeks in condition just long enough to get carbonation in your bottles, and then you're drinking it, you're getting twang. That's it, you're getting twang. You're not stopping it, but it's not because of the water. Yeah. But again, like I said, Black Rock, doing the business. That's another decent kit. And like I said, making those couple of improvements based around the removing the maltodextrin, particularly from this one. And I said, I knew using the BE3 wasn't my best option, but I said in the tasting, I had other ways of other stuff, but it was here, so I used it. This beer on its own, I think, would definitely be better for no maltodextrin to, drop a little bit of body out of it. Not that the body isn't nice, but for the style, it would certainly be better if it would come down a little bit to get that little bit of crispness in it. But yeah, again, as far as Twang Files go, we've made no remarkable discoveries, we've made no great mentionable ways of getting rid of twang. It's still there in both of these beers. If anything, it shows again, patience, take your time, use the right ingredients, let things come, and you'll get yourself a reasonable kit beer. So guys, gonna wrap it up. That's got us pretty. We're getting closer towards the end of these Twang Files, so we've still got a little bit to go. Twang Files 4, the next brew, which is actually right now it's not far off. It's the Mangrove Jack's Irish Ale out of the pouch. And that was purely to see whether the pouch has any influence on the twang. And again, it's another one, a lot of brewers who swear that there is no twang in the pouch, which is argument for the whole, it's part of the canning process, but that's coming soon. It was kegged on the 3rd of May, so that makes it, we're on the 20th, we're still 2 weeks off tasting on that. So anyway, and the next extravaganza brew is in the fridge, about the coal crash. But anyway, that be her. I will say the tap water, or the spring water, has made a better looking, you know, got a little bit better lacing. The heads, at this point, it's pretty much irrelevant. It's much the same, but it has been a little bit better. But again, I think treat your chlorine. That's about it, and that's something I'll probably need to look at maybe down the track a little bit, whether that itself makes an improvement directly against just tap water. But that's not going to be, that's nothing to do with Twang Files. That'll be just an ongoing something I can do with an ongoing extravaganza brew. So guys, anyway, for now, we haven't fixed the twang. It's still there, but we're starting to work ways of how we can make it less of a problem in your beer. Anyway, that's me. I'm Little John. You're not. You can leave comments or questions down the bottom. Thank you to the patrons. This is all happening because of patrons. If you're interesting. If you're interesting, that's good. If you're interested in being a Patreon or seeing what it's about, there's a link down below. If you're subscribed to the channel, thank you very much. If you aren't subscribed, roll around, find the little subscribe button and hit it. Ring the bell while you're at it, that way you don't miss any videos. And if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. But for now, I'm done. So until I see you in the next video when we're brewing beer, drinking beer, or talking beer, good brewing.